A look at life on the border across state lines.
Pivotal moments in U.S.-Mexican history happened here in El Paso.
How the president's calls for border security are being heard.
I was very upset and disillusioned by our president.
Now that the border wall is up, I think it has made a difference.
And areas vulnerable to illegal crossings and smuggling.
The infrastructure is not there for them like it is in other parts of Cochise County.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. This week our ongoing border coverage takes us outside of Arizona to El Paso, where President Trump held a campaign rally highlighting border security. Along the way we visit communities in southeastern Arizona, New Mexico and Texas to see for ourselves if rhetoric from the Capitol reflects a crisis at the U.S. southern border.
Our crew leaves Tucson on Sunday morning, a day before the president is scheduled to speak in Texas. Our first stop is the city of WILLCOX, a community of about 3,500. Agriculture and tourism are its lifeblood. We meet with Alan Baker, executive director of the WILLCOX Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture. While the city is about 60 miles north of the U.S.-Mexico border, Baker tells us some out-of-state tourists are wary about visiting.
We routinely get phone calls at the Chamber of Commerce asking if it's safe or not to come here because they hear that it's a dangerous area, it's a war zone, and so that it impacts us quite a bit.
What do you do to keep this image in check so that people understand that's not, what you're seeing played out in the press is not reality?
Especially with our social media and other areas, we really try to keep a positive image going for Cochise County and for WILLCOX. There's a lot of great things here, as you know, and the more you can show people out having a good time, the more people get comfortable with the area.
Do you feel the rhetoric that we hear often played out in the press that this is a border region or a border community?
Well, this is a border area. Absolutely, it's a border area. What we hear in the press on either way really isn't substantiated by what we deal with on a daily basis.
So oftentimes Tucson will get the rap of you're not close to the border because you're 60 miles north, but here, given that you are an agriculture community, you very much are.
Well, we are close to the border, and remember that our community, in other words, the trade area for WILLCOX extends almost to the border, almost to Douglas, so absolutely we are a border community.
Are there challenges with the economy given its proximity to the border?
There are. Certainly there are a lot of challenges given the proximity to the border, the port of Douglas, a lot of those things. It absolutely affects our economy, and the politics affects our economy. We do a lot of trade back and forth, so what happens in the press sometimes affects what happens at the border.
When the government shuts down, does that impact a rural community like this one?
Absolutely. In Arizona, as you know, in Arizona, most of the land is owned by the government. So when you have things like the Chiricahua National Monument that are shut down during one of our larger festivals that brings people from all over the world, it absolutely impacts us.
How do you recover?
A lot of hard work in getting people here and to encourage them that this is a great place to come, no matter what's going on.
When we leave WILLCOX, rain and wind have mostly swept the sidewalks of any foot traffic. We get back onto I-10 and continue east.
So we're leaving Cochise County, and one of the things that's interesting in coming here is, though WILLCOX is some 60 miles north of the border, a lot of people here do consider themselves border residents, whereas being that I'm from Cochise County and from Douglas, right on the border, there's a difference of opinion of what life on the border is like. And when we were telling people that we're the PBS affiliate here in town and we're doing a story about border issues, a lot of them were quick to dismiss that there are issues surrounding the border that affect our community. What we found is that they're more concerned about the economy. That's what they're worried about. And then talking with Alan, we understand that they are connected, because if tourists are concerned about traveling to a border region for safety and security, they're less likely to come here or even spend their money here. And that, of course, has a trickle-down effect on the population, on this community.
We continue to El Paso, a city of nearly 700,000 people that neighbors an even larger metro in Mexico. The city of Juarez boasts a population of more than 1 million. In his State of the Union address, the president used El Paso as an example of a dangerous city that saw violent crime drop significantly when barriers at the border went up.
The border city of El Paso, Texas, used to have extremely high rates of violent crime. With a powerful barrier in place, El Paso is one of the safest cities in our country.
The day we arrived, the mayor of El Paso authored an op-ed for USA Today, refuting the president's claim, saying crime was already on the decline before construction on new barriers began. During our brief stay, we tried to get a better sense of the city's relationship with Mexico. The following day, we learned more about the southwest border from Rick Jervis, a reporter for USA Today based in Texas. We meet in an open space at the border used recently by federal agents for training operations.
El Paso's thrust into the spotlight with the president's remarks during the State of the Union. How relevant, how real is what he says that's happening in this community?
It's very sort of relevant. It's a major border city, does a lot of trade with like Mexico. It's the 10th largest trading border city in the actual U.S. It has a long, very long, rich cultural history with its Mexican neighbor. And so they're at the middle of this right now. They're like really at the center of this.
When we hear the terms dangerous or crisis, can that be considered warranted based on your experiences of covering these regions?
It kind of depends where you are. For the most part, I haven't seen a sort of full-blown crisis. I've been sort of up and down the actual border, and what I'm seeing is a lot of families, a lot of sort of desperate families crossing over. And I've talked to like a lot of people who live along the border, asked them the same question, whether there is a crisis, whether there is like an emergency. And sort of resoundingly, I've been told that there is not, that they feel that what the Border Patrol is doing and what their local sheriff's departments are like doing are really good, and that they're like keeping them safe.
How likely is this to continue? I mean, we've been dealing with this for months now.
It really is like the really big question out there right now that everybody's trying to grapple with. The situation in Central America, where a lot of these folks are actually coming from, are pretty bad and not actually improving. I've talked to a lot of folks who are along the border who recently came from some of these countries, and asked them, even if they get sort of deported, will they go back to their home countries, or will they try again to like get into the country? And to a T, all of them say, no, we will sort of continue trying to come over into this country because their situation back in their home country is just that bad.
So we just left the international border. Now we're headed to the University of Texas, El Paso, where we're meeting with two people. One of them is a political communications professor who has his finger on the pulse of this community. And what we're going to hear from him is how this region, the El Paso area, really feels about being thrust into the national spotlight, given the president's remarks over the State of the Union address recently. The other is a retired Tucson Sector Border Patrol chief who now works at UTEP, the Center for Law and Human Behavior. What we'll get from him is his perspective working in law enforcement, but also stepping outside and looking at it from a different perspective about some of the needs of the border.
12 years. So Sam is an alum, and
We first arrive at the Sam Donaldson Center for Communication Studies to meet Richard Pineda. We talk about how the president's rally tonight fits into the overall debate our country is having about border security.
well, I think it's always important whenever the commander-in-chief picks a place to visit, but in particular in regards to border and immigration policy, both Presidents Bush and Obama have used the border as a backdrop to be able to try to make the case for particular policy. Today's visit by President Trump is different. It's funded by the Trump 2020 campaign. It's used as a kickoff to a certain extent for his campaign. And I think it's less about policy, more about reasserting this message that the wall is part of the president's agenda, and that his interest is to try to meet that agenda even in face of a potential second government shutdown.
Oftentimes in border communities, we hear we are more than just the border. Here you have academia, you have military, you have a cross-border economy. How would you describe this region?
I think that the border makes this region incredibly rich, and I think that that's true historically. I think the two communities owe their existence to each other. But I think what you're seeing right now is an economic connection, a social connection, and I think even to a certain extent a political connection between these two communities. And I think it's really troublesome when you've got somebody that comes from outside, regardless of their status, even if it is the President of the United States, somebody that comes into a community and says, you know, you were dangerous, there were these different situations that existed, but then border control policy was the difference in terms of coexisting. That's simply not true. I think when you look at a community like El Paso, our history suggests that not only have we had a really strong relationship with our neighbor to the south, but so much in terms of pivotal moments in U.S.-Mexican history happened here in El Paso. So not only the Chamizal Treaty, but also some of the framework for NAFTA. And this is in some ways the perfect experiment for how borders should work. The flow of human capital, the flow of economic capital, and the flow of intellectual capital. And I think that's what makes this place really unique. And I think that anytime somebody from outside of El Paso makes these observations or casts these dispersions, it's always problematic for us here.
After leaving Dr. Pineda's office, we head across campus to meet with former Tucson and El Paso Sector Chief Victor Manjares, a native Tucsonan who retired from the Border Patrol after serving for more than 20 years. Our discussion begins with how his views about border security have evolved over time.
When I'm looking at border security, my biggest challenge when I was in the Border Patrol was getting a clear definition of what effective border security is. On that, I can't tell you how many congressmen, senators I would ask that question. If they secure the border, chief, and I'd say, well, what does success look like to you? If I could go back with a magic wand, I would start off with a clear definition of what success looks like. On that, but I think success, anyways, is going to look at a combination of personnel, tactical infrastructure, and tactical infrastructure can be from roads to border fences to border barriers to access roads, things of that nature, and technology.
We were in Yuma recently when a group of Central Americans very easily crossed into the U.S. and requested asylum. Do you suppose that there are areas that do not have a barrier that put the U.S. in a dangerous spot or at a threat level because anybody could theoretically walk in?
I do. I think there's certain areas. I certainly wouldn't propose that it's 2,000 miles of nearly southern border. I think it's looking at the urban areas that are not covered by some kind of barrier. Again, there's a misperception that of a barrier because what's going to stop everyone. It really isn't. It's not designed to do that. What it's designed to do is to give law enforcement the opportunity actually to provide an effective law enforcement response.
Given your experience and what you do now, do you have a solution that you think would make everyone happy, or mostly everyone happy?
I don't know if there's a solution that would make everyone happy because what I've learned about border security or anything about border, it's so polarizing, especially in the last 30 years. It's either far right, far left, very few in the middle, and then the sides flip. It doesn't take long, a decade, and they flip. But I think when you're looking at border security, you're looking at what's going on now, because I do believe what's going on right now is a humanitarian crisis on that with the people seeking asylum and things of that nature. But I think there are three different legislative and judicial policies that are having a big effect on what we're seeing now. Part of that magic wand, I would actually look at our criteria for asylum, looking at that threshold. I would also look at what's referred to as a FLOTA settlement, because that has an impact with the unaccompanied children. And I also look at the Victims Trafficking Act. And I know that's not the right title of the other one because it's longer than that. But those three, if we're revisited and looked at, we could actually have a big impact on what's occurring on the border now, which I think would allow us to have a better conversation nationally of what we should be doing for border security.
We leave UTEP to hear from Border Patrol. The agency agrees to an interview at El Paso Sector headquarters. The sector covers more than 260 miles of border and also includes all of New Mexico. Of all 9 sectors on the southwest border, it has seen the largest increase in the number of family units apprehended within the last fiscal year, encountering more than 25,000 family units, an increase of nearly 1,600%. At headquarters, I meet with Agent Joe Romero to talk about challenges patrolling the border in this region.
El Paso sector since 2006 has seen a steady flow. Although some of it has decreased over time, we've also seen an uptick, and I think that's true along the whole southern border. As some areas of the border become more successful or find more success in stopping some of the illegal either immigration or drug crossings, you'll find that it tends to flow towards another area where they feel, the cartels feel like they can exploit that area. But as a whole, throughout from 2006 to now, as a whole, the Border Patrol has seen a pretty steady decrease. Now in El Paso, we've seen the decrease. Right now, we're currently seeing an increase. But overall, along the southern border, the United States Border Patrol has still seen an overall decrease.
So the numbers are back on the increase, though you still have in place the number of agents, the increased infrastructure. So how are these people getting into the country and thus being arrested?
Well, what we're seeing is a different type of individual coming across. In 2006, the majority of the people we encountered were from Mexico. Now what we've been seeing over the last few months is the increase of people from Central America. El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala tend to make up the majority of what we're seeing, and they tend to be family units. And so in those cases, we're not talking about people that are trying to, for the most part, they're not trying to evade arrest or escape the sight of our agents as much as they're looking for our agents to turn themselves in.
Do you have the staffing in place to ensure that everyone is vetted and their paperwork is processed?
It takes a little bit more manpower, a lot more hours, but it works in cooperation with us, working closely with ICE, working with other agencies to ensure that we're able to facilitate all of this. So there's a lot more coordination that has to go into it. It's, right now I'd say it's still manageable, but it's definitely puts more of a strain on what we're doing right now as opposed to what we were doing, say, 10 or 12 years ago when it was mostly Mexican nationals.
In Arizona, for example, we see areas where there's concertina wiring placed near the ports of entry. Has that happened in your region?
We do not have any type of extra barriers other than what we've already put in place. There hasn't been any extra wiring or barbed wire or anything else that's gone in. So at this point, we're still using what we've got.
What do you think needs to be done to increase border security or improve border security?
At the end of the day, the most important thing that we've seen is manpower. I don't care what type of barrier you put up. I don't care how many sensors you have on the ground. I don't care how many cameras you have. At the end of the day, the boots on the ground are the most important asset because there's not a single camera or barrier or vehicle that will ever arrest a person. The Border Patrol is apolitical. We're not on either side of the aisle. What we are is we are a law enforcement agency, and our goal is to enforce the laws as they're written. We're always looking for better ways to improve, whether it's through having more infrastructure put up, whether it's more resources, more technology, or more manpower. Because the reality is, when you're talking about the evolution of safety and security in this country, good enough is not good enough. We're always looking for ways to improve what we're doing, because whether it's one family that gets away from us, a murderer that gets away from us, a serial killer that gets away from us, somebody will be impacted by that in some way.
Now, late in the afternoon, we make our way to the Coliseum box office, where President Trump will speak in a few hours. About a mile from the venue, we see a crowd protesting the president. Many are here in support of former Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke, who's hosting his own event tonight. One woman tells us she traveled here from her home in Globe, Arizona.
I think it's important to show up, to show up and show support for this and show how many people actually don't agree with the policies of, putting children in cages.
El Paso is safe! El Paso is safe!
I've lived in El Paso for 25 years, and I'm here to support my community because I was very upset and disillusioned by our president talking very badly about our community.
We leave the event and navigate through heavy traffic to get to the Coliseum.
As the sun sets here in El Paso, thousands wait outside the Coliseum to see President Trump.
We speak to people as they wait about the president's State of the Union remarks and their support for him. One of the first people we meet is a lifelong resident of El Paso.
When I was a young child, I lived right by the border, and we did have a major problem with theft and crime. Now that the border wall is up, I think it has made a difference ever since then.
What did you think when President Trump actually started mentioning El Paso by name?
I liked it. He got a few points wrong, but I still support him. So.
What did he get wrong?
About the wall. He's saying that when you build the wall, it got safer, and that's not necessarily true. But the wall is needed. It's the fundamental thing that you need for the border.
Why do you like President Trump? What is the number one thing? Is it border-related issues?
Well,
or?
I like him because he's doing something different. He's actually doing something great for America. I mean, as far as the economy, work, I mean, he's standing up for issues that people won't even talk about.
The line to get in grows longer and snakes down the street. Not everyone will get to see the president in person.
Thank you very much, El Paso. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just before the rally began, lawmakers on Capitol Hill agreed on the framework for a deal to fund border security and prevent another shutdown.
As I was walking up to the stage, they said that progress is being made with this committee. Just so you know, we're building the wall anyway.
The president uses tonight to again call for more barriers along the southern border.
But if we had proper border security, including a very powerful wall, we wouldn't have to work so hard. And it would be a lot safer and a lot better.
Night falls and we leave El Paso to head back west. The next morning we wake up in Columbus, New Mexico.
Columbus, New Mexico is a community of about 2,000 people. It's just a few miles north of the border with a port of entry that leads to Puerto Palomas, Mexico. The population there is about twice the size of Columbus.
Not long after the sun rises on Tuesday morning, the Borderland Cafe is open for business. Run by Adriana Zazumbo and her partner, its location on the beaten path makes it a common destination for locals and travelers alike.
You get a little bit of everything, the locals, the customs agents, border patrols, the teachers, and then also a lot of travelers. Since we're right on the corner of Highway 9 and 11, we get everyone that's going to like California, Arizona, or Texas, or Mexico.
Zazumba was raised in Columbus. She calls it a tranquil community where you don't hear much about crime, and she says those passing through rarely worry about their safety.
If anything, I hear them more concerned about them not having like a passport or they didn't bring it. But you never hear them like not wanting to go because it's not safe.
Glenn and Nancy Haney are staying at the nearby RV park. They spend 3 months on the road every winter away from their home in Wyoming.
It can be considered dangerous to be down along the border. Any of your kids ever express concern?
Some of our friends do.
My sister, this was a few years ago, when they first started having the unrest, she mentioned something about, well, you have to make sure you're safe, but we've always felt safe, so, you know.
They say Border Patrol's presence and the barriers at the international line put them at ease in communities like Columbus, but they're less certain about more remote areas where there are fewer resources.
If the people who are in power can put walls around their homes to feel safe, maybe we can put a wall around our home to keep us feeling safer. I don't know.
From here we go south a few miles to the port of entry. It's the state's only port that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Bollard fencing flanks either side of the port. Customs and Border Protection says only a handful of asylum seekers have showed up. Instead, most of the activity is happening about 90 miles southwest, outside Antelope Wells in New Mexico's Boot Heel, a remote area with rugged terrain. The day before we travel this region, agents apprehended a group of 330 immigrants, mostly from Central America, at the Antelope Wells port of entry. Border Patrol tells us cartels are directing more people to this route. Meanwhile, our journey home takes us on another rural corridor, vulnerable to trafficking, Highway 80.
We're here along Highway 80, and this particular stretch of road is unique given that it straddles the Arizona-New Mexico county lines. And it is a challenge because there's not an immigration checkpoint here, so between Douglas and Interstate 10, it's really up to local law enforcement and state police to patrol these routes.
Not far from Highway 80 off I-10, we meet with Cochise County Sheriff Mark Daniels. The sheriff is outspoken about border security and currently serves on the Department of Homeland Security Advisory Council, as well as chairman of Immigration and Border Security on the National Sheriff's Association. I ask him about the challenges patrolling Highway 80.
You know, you got your 3 major highways coming out of the county, moving up to I-10 here, but Highway 80 East is wide open. Wide open. I'll give you an example. Here, I was coming back from Porter, which is the east side of the county, It was a Sunday afternoon. I see a semi parked about 10 miles east of Douglas, pulled off the road there, direct shot into the border. Back doors of this 18-wheeler wide open. Come to find out, Border Patrol was tracking a load of illegals with dope on their back, and right to the spot. It was going right to that semi. So it's a very vulnerable spot. I've heard ADOT talk about it, I've heard Border Patrol talk about it, and it all goes back to one thing, funding.
Does that put certain spots at risk, and also your deputies?
We try to place our deputies around the county where there's reasonable response times everywhere in the county. We're the 38th largest landmass county in the country with over 3,000 counties. That is a challenge to police. So when you look at our eastern side, which is the hotspot, they call that the Arizona-New Mexico seam, where all those drugs and all that human trafficking is coming up. And so it's a huge challenge. The ranchers that live in that area, they're concerned about it. They're very concerned because the measures, the infrastructure is not there for them like it is in other parts of Cochise County.
You have a seat at the table with the president. If you could tell him what you think needs to be done to fix this, especially given all the rhetoric we're hearing about how to secure the border, what are a couple things that we can do to change all this?
My biggest voice I bring is community. And I bring that up every time I'm sitting there is, how's that going to affect the community? If you look at the current plan takes care of the port of entries in my county, the two. And then you look at the southern border as a whole, Yuma, El Paso, and San Diego are the other targeted areas of populated areas that have been taken care of. The rest of the rural parts of the southern border have been left out, and it's bothersome.
You've shared the stage with the president on numerous occasions, and of course in leadership with the Sheriff's Association. Do you get the sense that he understands the gravity of the situation along the border?
He does, and one thing, and I say this too, I mean, when he says he wants a border wall, I take that as a symbolic way of securing our border. And though I know he's pushing real hard for the infrastructure on the border, the border, just the wall alone is not the answer. We have to have a comprehensive approach towards staffing, infrastructure, technology, virtual, which is what we've done here in Cochise County. If you're going to truly secure this border, can we do a better job? That's the bottom line. Yes, but we have to have the will by Congress to do that. And these folks, I would love to have Congress come on a bus trip to rural parts of our southern border and see really how these people live. I guarantee you, hopefully we'd change that opinion.
After leaving the sheriff, it's time to return to Tucson. We had set out to see if the president's description of a crisis at the border was shared by those living in the region. Hearing from community members, business owners, and law enforcement across 3 states, it's clear that rhetoric from the top gets interpreted differently depending on who you ask. While it remains a divisive issue nationally, we saw it did little to disrupt the day-to-day for those who call the borderlands home.
After 3 days on the road, we're back home, and that brings our special edition of Arizona 360 to a close. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.